This video will not only give you a list of the most influential African Americans throughout history, but also who they are, their history, and why they deserve to be on this list. Starting off at number 10 we have Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall was a prominent African American lawyer and civil rights activist, best known for his role as lead counsel in the landmark 1954 Supreme Court case Brown v. Board of Education, which declared segregation in public schools to be unconstitutional. He was also the first African American to serve on the Supreme Court of the United States, serving from 1967 to 1991. Marshall was born in Baltimore, Maryland, on July 2, 1908. His father was a steward at an all-white country club, and his mother was a teacher. Despite facing poverty and racial discrimination, Marshall received a strong education, attending Lincoln University and later Howard University School of Law, where he earned his law degree. Marshall's legal career was dedicated to fighting for racial equality and ending segregation. In 1936, he became the first African American attorney for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, where he argued several landmark cases that helped to end segregation. In 1940, he won Chambers v. Florida, which established that forced confessions are unconstitutional. He also won several cases that expanded the rights of African Americans, including Smith v. Allwright, 1944, which banned the use of the white primary in southern states, and Shelley v. Kramer, 1948, which declared that racial covenants in real estate deeds were unconstitutional. However, his most significant victory came in the Brown v. Board of Education case. The case involved a group of African American parents who sued the Topeka, Kansas, school district for not allowing their children to attend the same schools as white children. In a unanimous decision, the Supreme Court declared that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional, and that separate educational facilities were inherently unequal. This decision marked a turning point in the civil rights movement and helped to end segregation in the United States. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy nominated Marshall to the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. He served in this role until 1965, when President Lyndon B. Johnson nominated him to the Supreme Court. As a Supreme Court justice, Marshall continued to be a vocal advocate for civil rights, voting in favor of affirmative action and against the death penalty. He was also a strong defender of individual liberties, including freedom of speech and the press. Throughout his life, Thurgood Marshall was a tireless champion of equal rights and an inspiration to millions of people. He challenged segregation and discrimination in the courts, and his legal victories had a lasting impact on American society. He was a symbol of hope for those who sought to end racial inequality, and his legacy continues to inspire people to this day. Thurgood Marshall was a towering figure in the fight for racial equality and one of the most influential African Americans of the 20th century. Through his legal work and service on the Supreme Court, he helped to end segregation and expand the rights of African Americans. His legacy will continue to inspire generations to come and serves as a reminder of the importance of standing up for what is right and fighting for equality for all people. The next most influential African American is Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth was an African American abolitionist and women's rights activist, known for her powerful speeches and tireless advocacy for justice and equality. Born into slavery in New York State in the late 1700s, Truth eventually escaped to freedom and became one of the most influential figures in the fight against slavery and for women's rights. Growing up as a slave, Truth experienced the brutalities of the slave system firsthand. However, she never lost her spirit or her determination to fight for her freedom. In 1826, she successfully sued to reclaim her son Peter, who had been illegally sold away from her. This was a remarkable accomplishment and helped to establish Truth as a powerful voice for freedom. In the mid-1840s, Truth became an active abolitionist, traveling the country and giving speeches to promote the cause of ending slavery. She was particularly well known for her speeches on the Ain't I a Woman speech, which challenged the notion that women, particularly women of color, were inferior to men. In these speeches, Truth combined her own experiences as a former slave and a woman to call for justice and equality for all people. In addition to her work as an abolitionist, Truth was also a passionate advocate for women's rights. She was an early supporter of the women's suffrage movement, and her speeches and writings helped to bring attention to the struggle for women's rights. She was a powerful and charismatic speaker, and her speeches inspired and rallied people to action. Throughout her life, Sojourner Truth remained dedicated to the cause of justice and equality. She traveled extensively, giving speeches and advocating for freedom and equality for all people. She was a powerful voice for the abolitionist movement and for women's rights, and her legacy continues to inspire people to this day. Through her speeches and activism, she challenged slavery and discrimination and inspired countless people to fight for equality. Her legacy continues to inspire and challenge us to this day, reminding us of the importance of standing up for what is right and fighting for a better future for all people. At number 8 we have Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was a former slave and one of the most influential African American figures of the 19th century. Born into slavery in Maryland in the early 1820s, Douglass escaped freedom in the North in the late 1830s and dedicated his life to the abolition of slavery and the fight for racial equality. As a slave, Douglass experienced the brutalities of the slave system firsthand. However, he was also exposed to ideas of freedom and equality through his encounters with abolitionist literature and other anti-slavery advocates. After escaping to the North, Douglass became a powerful voice in the abolitionist movement, traveling the country and giving speeches to promote the cause of ending slavery. In addition to his work as an abolitionist, Douglass was also a passionate advocate for equal rights and education. He believed that education was the key to empowering African Americans and helping them to achieve equality, and he was a strong supporter of education initiatives for black children. He was also a powerful writer, publishing several influential books and newspapers, including his landmark autobiography, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave. Throughout his life, Douglass remained dedicated to the cause of justice and equality. He worked tirelessly to promote the abolition of slavery, and after the Civil War, he continued to advocate for equal rights for African Americans. He was a powerful voice for the abolitionist movement and for civil rights, and his legacy continues to inspire people to this day. Through his speeches and activism, he challenged slavery and discrimination and inspired countless people to fight for equality. His legacy continues to inspire and challenge us to this day, reminding us of the importance of standing up for what is right and fighting for a better future for all people. At number 7 we have Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou was an African-American poet, memoirist, and civil rights activist who rose to prominence in the mid-20th century. Born in St. Louis, Missouri in 1928, Angelou experienced a difficult childhood marked by poverty and family struggles, but she was also exposed to the rich cultural traditions of the African American community. Angelou's early life was marked by trauma and adversity, including a period of homelessness and a traumatic sexual assault. Despite these challenges, Angelou was determined to overcome and succeed, and she pursued a variety of careers, including work as a calypso singer and dancer, as well as roles in theater and film. It was her writing, however, that would establish Angelou as one of the most influential African Americans of her generation. In 1969, she published her first memoir, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, which told the story of her childhood and early life. The book was a critical and commercial success, and it established Angelou as a powerful voice for African Americans and women. In addition to her writing, Angelou was also an active participant in the civil rights movement of the 1960s. She was a friend and supporter of Martin Luther King Jr., and she served as the Northern Coordinator for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Her activism and her writing both helped to raise awareness about the struggles faced by African Americans and other marginalized communities. Throughout her life, Maya Angelou remained dedicated to the cause of justice and equality. She continued to write and speak out on a wide range of issues, including race, gender, and poverty, and her work inspired countless people to fight for a better future. Her poetry and her memoirs are widely read and revered, and her legacy continues to inspire people to this day. Through her writing and activism, she challenged discrimination and inspired countless people to fight for a better future. Her legacy continues to inspire and challenge us to this day, reminding us of the importance of standing up for what is right and fighting for a better future for all people. At number 6 we have Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was an African-American abolitionist, humanitarian, and spy during the Civil War. Born into slavery in Maryland in the early 1820s, she escaped to freedom in the North in the late 1830s and dedicated her life to the abolition of slavery and the fight for racial equality. As a former slave, Tubman was deeply committed to the abolitionist cause, and she became one of the most famous conductors on the Underground Railroad, a network of secret routes and safe houses used by escaped slaves to reach freedom in the North. Over the course of her life, she is estimated to have helped more than 300 slaves escape to freedom, and she was known for her bravery and resourcefulness in the face of danger. In addition to her work as an abolitionist, Tubman also served as a spy and nurse for the Union Army during the Civil War. She used her extensive knowledge of the Southern landscape and her ability to blend in with local communities to gather intelligence and provide aid to Union soldiers. After the war, she continued to work as an advocate for racial equality and women's rights, and she was a strong supporter of the suffrage movement. Throughout her life, Harriet Tubman remained dedicated to the cause of justice and equality. She worked tirelessly to promote the abolition of slavery, and after the Civil War, she continued to advocate for equal rights for African Americans. Her bravery, determination, and selflessness made her an inspiration to generations of Americans, and she is remembered today as one of the most influential figures in African American history. Through her activism and her work on the Underground Railroad, she challenged slavery and discrimination and inspired countless people to fight for equality. Her legacy continues to inspire and challenge us to this day, reminding us of the importance of standing up for what is right and fighting for a better future for all people. At number 5 we have Malcolm X. Malcolm X was an African-American Muslim minister, human rights activist, and public speaker. Born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1925, he was raised in a turbulent family environment marked by poverty and racial discrimination. Despite these challenges, Malcolm X went on to become one of the most influential African Americans of the 20th century. In the early 1940s, Malcolm X became involved in criminal activity and was eventually sentenced to prison. While in prison, he became a member of the Nation of Islam, a black nationalist and separatist organization, and he quickly rose to prominence as a spokesman for the group. Through his charismatic speeches and his unwavering commitment to the cause of racial equality, Malcolm X emerged as a powerful voice for African Americans and a symbol of resistance to oppression. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, Malcolm X continued to advocate for black empowerment and self-determination. He was a passionate and controversial figure, known for his uncompromising stance on issues of racial justice and his willingness to challenge the status quo. Despite his radical views and his confrontational style, he inspired many African Americans with his message of hope and his vision of a better future. In 1964, Malcolm X left the Nation of Islam and began a new chapter in his life. He embarked on a pilgrimage to Mecca, and upon his return, he changed his name to El Hajj Malik El Shabazz and became more committed to working for racial equality through peaceful means. Tragically, he was assassinated in 1965, but his legacy continued to inspire and challenge generations of African Americans to work for justice and equality. Through his activism and his speeches, he challenged discrimination and inspired countless people to fight for a better future. His legacy continues to inspire and challenge us to this day, reminding us of the importance of standing up for what is right and fighting for a better future for all people. At number 4 we have Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks was an African American civil rights activist and icon. Born in Tuskegee, Alabama in 1913, she grew up in a time of intense racial segregation and discrimination. Despite these challenges, Parks went on to become one of the most influential African Americans of the 20th century. In 1955, Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat on a Montgomery, Alabama bus to a white person, as was required by the city's segregation laws. Her act of civil disobedience sparked a boycott of the city's bus system by the African American community, which lasted for more than a year and led to the eventual desegregation of the city's buses. Through her bravery and her unwavering commitment to justice, Parks became a symbol of the civil rights movement and an inspiration to millions of people around the world. Her act of civil disobedience challenged the system of segregation and discrimination that was deeply ingrained in American society, and it helped to galvanize the broader civil rights movement. Throughout her life, Parks continued to work for racial equality and social justice. She was a strong advocate for voting rights, and she supported a wide range of civil rights organizations and causes. She was also a committed member of the African American community, and she dedicated herself to improving the lives of those around her. Rosa Parks was a powerful voice for justice and equality. Through her activism and her unwavering commitment to the cause of civil rights, she challenged discrimination and inspired countless people to fight for a better future. Her legacy continues to inspire and challenge us to this day, reminding us of the importance of standing up for what is right and fighting for a better future for all people. Coming in at number 3 is Barack Obama. Barack Obama is a former president of the United States and one of the most influential African Americans of the 21st century. Born in Honolulu, Hawaii in 1961, Obama was raised in a multicultural family environment and attended schools in the United States and Indonesia. Despite these diverse experiences, he went on to become a prominent figure in American politics. In 2008, Obama was elected the 44th President of the United States, becoming the first African American to hold the nation's highest office. During his presidency, Obama implemented a number of significant policy initiatives, including the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, and the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. He also took steps to address issues of racial justice, such as police brutality and mass incarceration, and he worked to improve relations between the United States and the Muslim world. In addition to his policy initiatives, Obama was known for his charismatic speeches and his inspiring message of hope and change. Throughout his presidency, he encouraged Americans to come together to solve the country's problems and to work towards a brighter future. He also emphasized the importance of equality, justice, and opportunity, and he encouraged all Americans to get involved in the political process and to make their voices heard. Since leaving office, Obama has continued to be a prominent figure in American politics and a powerful voice for progress and change. He has remained active in public life, speaking out on issues of racial justice, climate change, and other important issues. He has also continued to inspire millions of people around the world with his message of hope and his commitment to a better future for all. In conclusion, Barack Obama was a trailblazer and a powerful voice for progress and change. Through his leadership, his policy initiatives, and his inspiring message, he challenged the status quo and inspired countless people to work for a better future. His legacy continues to inspire and challenge us to this day, reminding us of the importance of leadership, service, and commitment to the common good. Coming in at number 2 is Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was a South African anti-apartheid revolutionary, political leader, and philanthropist who served as the country's first black president from 1994 to 1999. Born in 1918 in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa, Mandela was raised in a rural village and received a Western-style education. As a young man, he became politically active and eventually joined the African National Congress, ANC, a political organization dedicated to ending apartheid and promoting equality for black South Africans. Mandela's political activism and his role in the ANC eventually led to his arrest and imprisonment in 1962. He spent 27 years in prison, much of it on Robben Island, where he was subjected to harsh conditions and mistreatment. Despite these conditions, Mandela never lost hope or his commitment to the cause of ending apartheid and promoting racial equality. In 1990, following international pressure and the collapse of the apartheid regime, Mandela was released from prison. He immediately returned to political life, working to negotiate a peaceful end to apartheid and to lay the foundations for a new, democratic South Africa. In 1994, he was elected the country's first black president, and he worked tirelessly over the next 5 years to heal the deep wounds of apartheid and to build a new, more just and equal society. Mandela's legacy is one of selflessness, dedication, and leadership. Through his words and actions, he inspired millions of people around the world to stand up for justice and equality. He also worked tirelessly to promote peace, reconciliation, and forgiveness, and he helped to bring an end to one of the most racist and unjust systems in modern history. After leaving office, Mandela continued to work for peace and justice, both in South Africa and around the world. He founded the Nelson Mandela Foundation, a charitable organization dedicated to promoting education, health, and social justice, and he continued to be a powerful voice for human rights and dignity. Nelson Mandela was one of the most influential African Americans of the 20th century. Through his leadership, his courage, and his unwavering commitment to justice and equality, he inspired millions of people around the world and left a lasting legacy of hope and progress. Today, he is remembered as a hero, a visionary, and a symbol of what is possible when people stand up for what they believe in. And in our number 1 position is not only the most influential African American in history, but also the most well-known, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a Baptist minister, activist, and one of the most prominent leaders in the American civil rights movement. Born in 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, King grew up in a family deeply committed to the principles of justice and equality. He was inspired by the teachings of Gandhi and the principles of nonviolence, and he went on to become a leading voice in the fight for civil rights in the United States. King's leadership and activism were instrumental in bringing about many of the most significant victories of the civil rights movement, including the end of segregation in public spaces and the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. He was also a powerful orator and a charismatic leader, and his speeches inspired millions of people around the world to join the struggle for civil rights. King's most famous speech, "I Have a Dream," delivered at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963, has become an iconic expression of the civil rights movement, and a symbol of the fight for equality and justice in America. In this speech, King called for an end to segregation and discrimination and for the creation of a society where all people, regardless of race, would be treated as equals. In addition to his activism and leadership, King was also a brilliant philosopher and theologian, and his writings and speeches continue to inspire and influence people around the world today. He saw the struggle for civil rights as part of a larger movement for peace, justice, and equality, and he worked tirelessly to promote these principles in all aspects of his life. Tragically, King was assassinated in 1968, at the age of 39. His death was a profound loss for the civil rights movement, and for the entire world, but his legacy has lived on, and he remains one of the most influential African Americans of the 20th century. Today, King is remembered as a hero, a visionary, and a symbol of what is possible when people stand up for what they believe in. Martin Luther King Jr. was a pivotal figure in the fight for civil rights in America, and one of the most influential African Americans of the 20th century. Through his leadership, his courage, and his unwavering commitment to justice and equality, he inspired millions of people around the world and left a lasting legacy of hope and progress. Today, his message continues to inspire and challenge people to work for a better world, and his legacy serves as a powerful reminder of what is possible when people stand together for what they believe in. If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and stay in the know.